In this video I'm going to show you how to sow small and medium sized seeds into seed trays, but the same applies if you're sowing them into pots as well. It's not the same technique for the bigger seeds. You probably want to look at the video on sweet peas for seeing how you sow bigger seeds, and for the very small, the fine seeds, that's a different technique altogether, and I'll show you that in a different video. But this is for small and medium sized seeds. So I've got some mixed lettuce here. I don't like the fact that it's useful that they're a mixed lettuce, but I like to know what I'm growing. It does actually tell you on the back of here what the different varieties of lettuce are in there, but you'd have to know your lettuce quite well to be able to identify them when they come up. Anyway, I'll show you how to do it. So what you want is you want to get your seed tray or your pot, whichever you're going to use, and fill it up with compost. So this is bought compost, it's not soil out of the garden, and it's peat free compost. So you don't want to be using peat anymore, there's no need for it. And you want to overfill, it's also bad for the environment as well. You want to overfill your seed tray with compost, don't push it down at this point. And then you want to get your leveler, your seed tray leveler. So you can buy them like this. This one is quite useful because it comes, you can turn it round and you can use those pushing in, and it'll give you some holes just to drop the seeds in, which is quite useful for the sort of larger medium seeds. So not large seeds, but the larger end of the medium type seed. But you can make them yourself. I made this out of a bit of old hardboard and stuck a handle on there. So you just go across and you cut off, gently cut off and level that compost in there, so you can see your edges. And then you're going to gently press this in to get the compost down and flat. So it's important to get a nice level flat surface, because if you've got bumps and hollows, when you sow the seed and drop it on, a lot of the seed is probably going to go into the hollow, and when you water it, the water's going to go into there as well, and they might be too deep and not germinate. So the reasons you sow seeds inside rather than just sowing them straight into the garden is that you can get in front hand on sowing the seeds, so you can get plants quicker, so that they're ready to go outside and they'll flower quicker. So you're getting them in advance really. And also some plants don't cope with the frost, so sowing them outside wouldn't work, because we might get a late frost and it'll kill them. So they need the heat and protection inside to grow well and to be reliable for you. So we've got these mixed lettuce seeds here, which I'm going to sow some on here. So you open the packet and you tend to find they've got a foil packet inside, which has been sealed, so there's no moisture in there, so to keep them dry, so they'll last as long as possible. And now, when you're coming to sowing the seeds, it's important to flick the packet at the top to get the seeds to drop down, because when you open them, you don't want them flying everywhere. And when you gently open the packet, and I always open it over the soil, so any seeds that do fall out, they fall into this soil and don't get mixed up with the rest of the compost, not soil really, it's compost, that's going to be used for something else, and you're not going to get mixed up seedlings there. So it's important to sow at the right density, what we call the right density, which is you don't want too many seeds in there. So too many seeds, they're gonna compete with each other for water, light and nutrients, and also because it's kind of a humid environment where you're growing them, there's a lot of moisture, you tend to get fungal problems if there's too many growing together. So the density is how many you're going to sow in this area, and you want to sow less rather than more, so sparser rather than too dense. So I've tipped some lettuce seeds into my hand there, hopefully you can see those. So you can tell it's a mix of lettuce seed because they're different colours. Now there's two ways to do that. You can pinch them and gently rub them between your fingers, and if you drop them from a height like this, just a gentle height, they'll find their own position on the soil and tend to, and if you keep moving your hand, they'll find their own place, and they'll be evenly distributed. You can, if you want to, and it's easiest on the other hand, I'll do it on that hand, is if you put them in your hand and you cup your hand, it creates this channel here of skim, and if you tap them, they'll sort of jump out, they'll slide down that gap and jump out. Now I think I've probably got enough in there, so I'm going to empty the other ones back into the packet, and I'm going to do that again over my compost, my seed tray, so if any miss, they go into where you want them to go and not mixed up in this other compost. So fold that over so they don't fall out, and we'll reseal that and be able to use them later. So for most seeds, what they need to do is they need to be covered up with a bit of soil, and it's important to get that at the right depth, because some seeds you need to check, the really fine seeds, some things like lobelia and things like, and begonias, they don't like being covered up, they like to have light to the seed, so you must read the instructions and follow those, but most seeds like a little bit of covering. If you sow them too deep, the problem is that seed contains everything that it needs to germinate and to get up to the surface and to the light, and then once it gets to the light, it'll start producing its own energy through photosynthesis and it's away. But if you sow these too deep, they use up the energy and they can't get up to the surface in time, so they die. So that's a problem. And if you sow them too shallow, they can tend to get washed away with the water, but sowing them too deep is the problem. So what you're aiming for generally is to cover them by twice the depth of the seed. That's hard to estimate sometimes because some of these seeds are so very small, but the best way to do it is you can get a sieve like this one, but this is a bit big really for working over here, but we'll give it a go. You can also use a pot. I often just use a pot. So, and you put the compost in because you want to remove the big bits of compost, the big lumps, because these little seeds aren't going to push through big lumps. They want some nice fine compost to get to. So you can put soil in there and you can jiggle it up and down, and that'll make it a nice little sieve. But if you're doing a lot, that's going to take you a while. So put the soil into here, the compost should I say, not the soil, and then you give it a shake, and in general you're going to cover the seeds with enough soil that you can't see them, you comfortably can't see them anymore. That looks good. And then I like to neatly smooth off the edges. You can, if you want to, give it a gentle tap down just to make sure the seeds are in good contact with the soil, with the compost, and then you're going to label them again with the variety. Some people put the date on that they've sown them. Their initials, we put as initials on here at college, so we know who's sown what. But you put lettuce, and then this one's called mixed green leaves because it's a mix, so we put that on there, and you want to put it down the side. So you've done that. How do you get them to actually germinate? So germinate, the process of them actually opening the seed, putting out the shoot and starting to grow. Well, what you need to do is you need to gently water these because they need some moisture. They need heat, and they need humidity, which is some moisture around the air as well, so they don't dry out. So you can do that by gently watering them. Some people put them in a tray and water it and let the water soak up. I tend to find that gets them a little bit too wet, gets the seed tray a bit too wet. We tend to use these, which are little bottle top waterers. So you fill that and then just go over the surface gently until it's moist, until it's all wet. And then what you want to do is you want to put them in a seed tray like that, and then cover them up with a propagator lid. So what they call the propagation environment, the requirements that they need to grow is they've got the moisture, they're going to get the heat and the light, in here in the polytunnel, because it's actually quite warm once the sun comes out in here, and they're going to get the humidity, so they need water, not too much, heat, light, and some humidity, and then they should come up and they should grow quite quickly if we get a sustained spell of warm weather. We are in February now, just at the beginning of February, so I'm just sowing some of the hardier things like these lettuce, things like that that'll be able to cope with the fluctuations in temperature. We are going to still get some cold nights. You mainly want to wait until March for most things that you're gonna sow, but you learn that through experience. And hopefully then we'll be able to prick these out in another video, pot them on, and then once they've grown we'll plant them out into the vegetable area of the garden, and we'll have some lettuce